Well, it is one of the leading stories at this hour. We're speaking here about leaders from various sectors gathering today in the Drakensberg to discuss issues affecting the country. They're taking part in the Drakensberg Inclusive Growth Forum hosted by the former President Kgalema Motlanthe and the Kgalema Motlanthe Foundation. Now, this event has become a regular on the South African calendar until the COVID-19 pandemic halted it. Senior reporter Aviwe Mtila has more from Drakensberg. Aviwe, always a pleasure speaking to you. A very good morning, colleague. What was said, though, about the current state of the country?
Good morning, Faith. And my jaw kept dropping when the former President Kgalema Motlanthe was speaking on the podium yesterday, painting out a bleak future, basically saying that we are in a bleak economic situation at the moment, and basically we are on a downward spiral that is predicated to continue in the foreseeable future. He mentioned a number of factors, which of course include the global factors as well as domestic factors in the country, even mentioning the energy crisis, pointing out maybe that gas can be the solution to our energy woes and also creating jobs. But of course, he also spoke of the politics, saying that there needs to be a stability between the political factors and the administration itself, also tackling local governance in itself, saying that the administrators in local governance need to be there, even outlive the political heads, because it's the administrators themselves that actually are the engines of the politics. And talking about engines, mentioning that people like engineers should be hired in a more permanent basis instead of being on contractual basis. But what was interesting also, Faith, was just the conversations around the leadership itself, saying that the current leadership needs to envision a future, basically, and be able to hand over the ropes to people that can actually take the country forward. In fact, let's take a listen to former President Kgalema Motlanthe as he tackled that issue.
True leadership must be able to vision an alternative leadership to the one that is only capable of practicing and facilitating. This is what the present political leadership of the African National Congress is incapable of envisioning, an alternative and oppositional leadership that legitimately goes beyond the one the dominant leadership is capable of doing and achieving. The practice of democracy is predicated on envisioning an alternative other beyond one's ability. This is the conundrum of the present crisis in South Africa.
So a bleak picture has been painted, Aviwe. A lot of criticism for how the current leadership has been faring. But I think there's no issue around, or perhaps we need to start focusing exactly what is going to be done to tackle these challenges. I mean, let's not forget the fact that this is still an individual who was the former head of state in South Africa. This is still a person who's the member of the African National Congress. So where to from here?
Well, there were a number of speakers there that painted the difficult and tumultuous times that we're in. In fact, one of them was the former Deputy Finance Minister, Mcebisi, who said that empty promises and big announcements will not turn our economic woes, for example. But another was the South African Reserve Bank Governor, Lesetja Kganyago, who basically spoke of the urgent reforms that are currently needed, mentioning, for example, that prices have tripled since 2000. Take that in, Faith. Since 2000, our prices have tripled. But he mentioned those reforms. In fact, I wanted to take a listen to the South African Reserve Bank Governor speaking on what needs to be done now.
Urgently needed. The majority of effort should be focused on the microeconomic reforms such as reliable and affordable energy, functional transport networks, functioning government institutions. Stop attacking the institutions of our democracy that had been tasked with particular responsibility because we just happen to be too good at what we are supposed to do, and then we actually then face attack in the problem. Institutions in a democracy matter. Quality institutions matter even more. The era of state capture taught us exactly that when institutions are weakened, we are all worse off rather than progressing. But the efforts that we have to take will not succeed unless the macroeconomic framework is resilient enough to sustain growth. Reforms are difficult, but the pain of not reforming is even worse. There is no such thing as a free lunch. There are only difficult trade-offs to be made. And out of this forum at the end of this weekend, I just hope that we would be able to frame the trade-offs that society must make and be able to have a conversation with society to say, you can either have this or you can have that. You cannot have all of those things at the same time because the means of meeting those needs are limited.
I'm sure it's going to be a busy day ahead for you, Aviwe, as you bring us some insights coming in from Drakensberg today. But we'll leave it there for now. Aviwe Mtila there, just giving us the latest. Some of those resolutions as well as those insights coming in from the Kgalema Motlanthe Foundation. The former head of state was speaking, and as we saw there, our Reserve Bank Governor, just looking at the status quo of South Africa. Well, to this